Welcome back, everybody, to the True Detectives Podcast, the show that takes a deep dive into the world of real-life crime and investigations. I'm Adrian Smith, and with me, as always, is the incredible Dr. Julia Jones.
Hey, everyone. Glad to be back with another gripping case.
And trust me, today's story is a real humdinger. It's got everything. A tough-as-nails detective, a string of child abductions, a suspect with a dark secret, and, oh yeah, that I mentioned a whole lot of corruption. Strap yourselves in. This is going to be a wild ride. So we're starting with Detective Sarah Merrick. She's a seasoned cop. But this case, a string of child abductions, is really starting to get to her. Can you imagine the pressure, Julia, to find these kids, to bring them home safe?
It's unimaginable, Adrian. The emotional weight on detectives in these cases, especially those involving children, is immense. It's not just about solving a puzzle. It's about saving lives, about delivering justice for the most vulnerable.
Exactly. And that weight, that urgency, can push even the most dedicated officers to their limits.
Which brings us to Mason Cole, our prime suspect. Cole is connected to a child trafficking ring, the kind of guy who gives you the creeps just by looking at him. Merrick is convinced he's their key to cracking the case wide open. But Cole's a slippery fish. During interrogation, Merrick, desperate for answers, let's just say she loses it. It's a symphony of violence, as she later admitted.
Violence during interrogation is, of course, highly controversial. But I think it's important to understand the psychological pressure cooker these detectives are operating under. It's not an excuse, but it offers some context as to why someone like Merrick, known for her by-the-book approach, might snap.
You're right, Julie. It's easy to judge from the outside. But in the heat of the moment, with the clock ticking and the lives of children at stake, things get messy. And Cole, the cunning fox that he is, uses that mess to his advantage. He knows the system, he knows his rights, and he plays the victim card masterfully, accusing Merrick of police brutality.
Classic manipulation tactic, Adrian. He turns the tables, making himself appear vulnerable and casting Merrick as the villain. He understands the power of perception, especially in cases involving law enforcement.
And sadly,
Yeah.
it works. Internal Affairs gets involved. Merrick is pulled off the case. Her career hanging by a thread. She's isolated, doubted, her whole world crumbling around her. But, as they say, sometimes you need to hit rock bottom to see the light.
What's fascinating here is how isolation can sometimes be a catalyst for breakthroughs. When we're removed from the noise, the chaos, the conflicting opinions, we're able to focus, to see things with fresh eyes. And that's exactly what happens to Merrick.
Absolutely. While everyone else is writing her off, Merrick becomes fixated on those interrogation tapes. Not to prove Cole's guilt, but to understand his game. She knows he was manipulating her. She just couldn't figure out how.
Like trying to crack a code, looking for the hidden message beneath the surface. And you know, Adrian, sometimes the most cunning criminals leave clues in the most unexpected places. A slight hesitation, a nervous tick, a flicker in the eyes. They're like tells in a poker game.
You hit the nail on the head, Julia. Merrick, after countless hours poring over those tapes, notices something. Every time she mentions Lieutenant Jacobs, Cole's jaw tightens ever so slightly. His eyes dart to the side for a split second. Jacobs, the golden boy of the force, the one everyone trusted, especially when it came to these child trafficking cases.
So Adrian Merrick's got this nagging suspicion about Lieutenant Jacobs, the very guy leading the charge against child trafficking. Where does this lead her?
It's like someone flipped the switch in Merrick's brain. Suddenly everything about Jacobs seems off. She starts digging deeper, pulling files, reviewing evidence, looking for any connection between Jacobs and Coles.
Yeah.
And what she finds? Well, it chills her to the bone. Phone records show hushed late-night calls between the two, just hours before each abduction. Witness statements, previously overlooked, now seem to place Jacobs near the abduction sites. It's a pattern, Julia. A pattern of subtle manipulations, carefully orchestrated to keep suspicion away from him.
This is where we see the dark side of authority. Someone like Jacobs, in a position of power and trust, can use that power to exploit and manipulate, to silence those who might speak against him. It's a chilling reminder that the wolves often wear sheep's clothing.
It's a betrayal on a whole other level, Julia. Merrick, at this point, knows she can't trust anyone. Internal Affairs is compromised. Her colleagues are blinded by Jacob's charm. And the evidence is buried so deep it takes months to uncover it through official channels. She's got a choice to make. Follow the rules and risk Jacobs getting away with it, or go rogue and take matters into her own hands.
And you know, Adrian, sometimes the system itself can be a barrier to justice. Bureaucracy, red tape, political maneuvering, it can all slow down, even derail an investigation. For someone like Merrick, driven by a fierce sense of justice and a burning desire to protect those children, breaking the rules might seem like the only option.
And break the rules she does.
Yeah.
Merrick goes full-on maverick, working alone. in the shadows, gathering evidence, building her case against Jacobs. She knows it's dangerous, knows she can lose everything, but she's determined to bring him down, no matter the cost. She's got to be smart, she's got to be cunning, she's got to beat Jacobs at his own game, and what she comes up with, well, it's pure genius.
You've got me on the edge of my seat, Adrian. Tell us, what's her plan?
Merrick realizes she needs to catch Jacobs red-handed, to get him on record admitting to his crimes.
Yeah.
And for that, she needs bait. And guess who's just become available? Mason Cole. She cuts a deal with him, promises him protection, a new identity, even, in exchange for his cooperation.
Whoa, this is high-stakes poker, Adrian. She's playing with fire. Using one criminal to catch another, it's a morally complex decision, one that raises a lot of ethical questions.
No doubt about it, Julia. But Merrick is convinced that the ends justify the means. She sets the stage for a final showdown, a trap designed to expose Jacob's true nature, and for the location. She chooses a place that's both symbolic and strategic, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a place rumored to be a hub for Jacob's trafficking operation.
Chilling. The setting itself is a character in this story, a silent witness to the darkness that's about to unfold.
Picture it, Julia. It's a dark, rainy night.
Yeah.
The only sounds are the dripping water and the distant rumble of thunder. Jacobs arrives first. Cocky, arrogant, expecting a simple meeting with Cole to tie up loose ends. Little does he know, Merrick is hidden in the shadows, recording everything.
The tension must be palpable, Adrian, like watching a predator walk into its own trap.
You can cut the tension with a knife. Cole, following Merrick's instructions, starts taunting Jacobs, accusing him of setting him up, of sacrificing him to protect the trafficking ring. Chuck gets on first. Tries to maintain his cool, his composure, but the pressure is building, and cracks are starting to appear.
It's like watching a house of cards slowly start to collapse. Each accusation, each taunt, chipping away at Jacobs' carefully constructed facade.
And then it happens. Cole, sensing Jacobs' weakness, pushes too far. He threatens to expose everything, to go to the media, to bring Jacobs down with him. And that's when the mask falls off. Jacobs, the golden boy, the protector, explodes. He becomes enraged, his words dripping with venom, confirming his involvement, his manipulation, his utter disregard for human life.
The monster is unmasked, his true nature revealed for all to see. And Merrick, she's got it all on tape.
It's a moment of pure adrenaline, Julia. Merrick's got her proof she's an explosive predator, but now she's got a bigger problem. Jacobs, realizing he's been played, pulls out his gun.
Oh no, Adrian, this just took a terrifying turn. What happens next?
Chaos erupts. Gunfire fills the warehouse as Jacobs, in a desperate attempt to silence Cole and Merrick, opens fire. Cole, caught in the crossfire, dies recovered. Merrick, forced to intervene, finds herself in a deadly shootout with a man she once considered a friend, a mentor.
A fight for survival in the heart of darkness. The warehouse becomes a battleground. The air thick with the smell of gunpowder and fear.
It's a frantic, chaotic scene. Bullets ricochet off the metal walls. Shadows dance in the flickering light.
Merrick.
Even with all her training, is outmatched, outgunned. She's fighting for her life, for the lives of those children, for a justice that seems almost impossible to reach.
This is where the listener has to be asking themselves, will Merrick make it out alive?
That's a question we'll have to answer when we come back. Because this story, my friends, is far from over. We left off with Detective Merrick in a life-or-death struggle, trapped in a shootout with the corrupt Lieutenant Jacobs, bullets flying, the warehouse echoing with the sounds of chaos and violence.
It's a moment that truly encapsulates the risks Merrick took when she decided to go rogue, remember. She's alone, operating outside the law, facing a desperate and dangerous man.
Talk about pressure. But Merrick, even with the odds stacked against her, she's a survivor. She uses the chaos to her advantage, her years of training kicking in. She moves like a ghost, using the shadows and the layout of the warehouse to outmaneuver Jacobs. Think about it. This wasn't just about shooting straight. It was about strategy, using her environment, her wits, to stay one step ahead.
Exactly. And that's what separates a good detective from a great one, the ability to think clearly under pressure, to adapt, to improvise. It's not just about brute force. It's about using your intellect, your instincts to survive.
So you got ends as abruptly as it began. Silence descends on the warehouse, broken only by the sound of sirens in the distance. Jacobs lies dead, his reign of terror finally over. Merrick, though shaken, has won, a victory hard-fought and drenched in moral ambiguity. She took the law into her own hands, crossed lines that most wouldn't dare to cross. But she stopped a monster. No doubt about it, but the aftermath, well, that's where things get really complicated. Merrick emerges from the warehouse, gun in hand, a walking paradox. A hero who broke the law, a savior stained with blood. Internal Affairs launches an investigation. But with the evidence Merrick gathered and Cole's reluctant testimony, they're forced to acknowledge the truth. Jacob's corruption is exposed, the trafficking ring crumbles, and the missing children's cases are reopened with a glimmer of hope.
It's a bittersweet victory,
Yeah.
wouldn't you say? Justice served, but at a tremendous cost. Merrick's career, her reputation, forever tarnished by her actions. She becomes a symbol, a lightning rod for debate, a vigilante, a hero, a rogue cop. The lines are blurred, the questions linger.
And then there's Mason Cole. He disappears in the chaos of the shootout, vanishes back into the shadows of the city. Some say he fled the country. Others believe he's still out there, watching, waiting. He becomes a ghost, a reminder of the deals made, the compromises struck in the pursuit of a greater good.
It's a reminder that in the real world, there are rarely clean endings. Loose ends remain, questions unanswered, consequences that ripple outward.
So where does that leave us? What can we learn from Detective Merrick's story? I think it challenges us to confront the complexities of justice, the gray areas where right and wrong collide. It forces us to ask ourselves, how far would we go to protect the innocent? What lines are we willing to cross? And what price are we willing to pay?
It's a conversation that needs to continue, Adrian, because these aren't just hypothetical questions. They're real-life dilemmas faced by those who dedicate their lives to upholding the law, to fighting for justice, even when the system fails them.
Well said.
Yeah.
And to all of you listening out there, thanks for joining us on this journey into the heart of a true detective's world. Remember, the pursuit of truth is rarely easy, often dangerous, and always worth fighting for. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and keep those questions coming.